Hi there, thanks for tuning in here at Train Details by Gus. In this video, I wanted to share my work on putting a little animation on my N-scale layout. I added lights to a police truck using fiber optic strands. So check this out and follow along. Although not exactly N-scale, these two vehicles will work just fine for this project. The first thing I had to do was clean up the yellow taxi, make it resemble more of a muscle car, and then disassemble the truck so that the fiber optics can be routed under the body. Also, using a pin vise, I drilled out the headlights, brush guard lights, and 4 spotlights on the roll bar. I then threaded the strands into each of the light sockets, being careful not to kink or put a bend in the fiber optic. This module section of my layout is 6 feet long and 24 inches wide. The tracks in the foreground are running eastbound and westbound. I wanted to create a visual distraction on the curved road in the background and thought this scene would work. A couple of holes were drilled through the wood decking and were painted roadway black to be less noticeable and to accommodate the placement of the fiber optics. I used a strand of 5 LED lights with its own flashing program and battery pack. I filed flat the top of the LED, and using my pin vise, I drilled a small hole in the center. The fiber optic strands will be glued in those holes. I wanted to reduce the visible flashing under the layout, so I found a small flat box for housing the lights. I hot glued each light in place and also secured the wires with hot glue. To protect the fiber optic strands, I used a short piece of flexible black plastic hose, the kind used for sprinkler systems. Using a small file, I cleaned up any possible sharp edges in the openings of the tube. Those black plastic hose pieces were hot glued in place in the holes drilled through the layout wood deck. I cut notches in the light box for each LED group of fiber optics and hot glued the black plastic pipe into each slot. Then with a couple of sheetrock type screws, I secured the box under the bottom of the layout deck. With the light box in place, the fiber optics were threaded through the protective pipework. Time to use a drop of CA adhesive to glue the strands into the holes drilled in the LEDs. Just a note, it's a good idea after cutting the fiber optic strands to sand each end with fine grit sandpaper and polish them flat. With all of this hardware being installed and hidden under the deck, I still wanted to have access to the on-off switch above the deck. I drilled a hole through the deck board large enough to have access to the battery pack switch, and to prevent any sharp edges, I used a rasp file to clean the opening. To hold the battery pack and on-off switch in place, I used a couple strips of 2-sided foam tape. I positioned the switch in line with the drilled hole and pressed it into place. Plug the battery pack into the light strand and we have lights. So there you have it. Trains run in the foreground with the new police truck activity in the background. Check this out on my layout with the scene in place. I like it. I enjoy adding this bit of animation to my home layout. It was designed to make the background a little less static. And now seeing the police dog holding the perpetrator at bay, it brings thoughts of making the dog a little more animated, but that's another project. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope it helped or slightly inspired you in your projects. You can check out my other works over at www.TRAIN-DETAILS-BY-GUSS.com. Don't forget the dashes. I have other such projects planned and in the works, so please subscribe and check back.